on 5 Sports Extra. It is time for 5 Live Formula 1. Ben Edwards. Hello again, Ben.
Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to qualifying for Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. It could be the defining session of the weekend at Imola. Overtaking not easy around the 3-mile 19-turn track, and a starting position will be crucial to success. Thank you for joining us, and we are building up to the 3 sessions that define the 20-place grid. Joining me is former McLaren F1 mechanic Mark Priestley, along with F1 correspondent for BBC Sports Andrew Benson. And Mark, while your old team is looking to be fastest again here, the planning and organisation of Q1 in a few minutes is not going to be that easy, is it?
It's highly likely to be chaos. Sort of organised chaos is the best way to try and describe it, and that's what the teams will try and look at it as. They've got to try and orchestrate the right gaps at the right times on what will be a very busy circuit. 20 cars out in the initial part of qualifying. They all want to find a gap that's ideally at least 6 or 7 seconds behind the car in front of them, and that's so they're not disturbed by the dirty air coming off the car that's ahead of them, that will then affect the downforce they're able to generate on their own car. So that's the ideal scenario, but the reality is on a 4.9 kilometre circuit as it is here at Imola, there just isn't space to get all 20 cars with that gap for each of them. So there's going to be traffic jams, there's going to be a little bit of chaos, and it's going to be elbows out trying to find the gap, because getting that gap is critical to getting a good clear lap around here.
Absolutely. A lot of history to this circuit. It's actually the 32nd World Championship race. It ran quite a lot in the 1980s and 1990s. There was a gap between 2006 and 2020 when it returned, and it has been back for that period since 2020. And it's Max Verstappen who has taken 3 wins out of the 4 races that have been held here. Sadly, in 2023, it didn't get to run at all, Andrew, because of the awful rain that came along. Thankfully, I don't think we're in for a wet weekend this time.
No, it's an idyllic late spring day in Emilia-Romagna, Imola, lovely part of the world, and so the Ferrari flags are flying, Ben, but don't hold out much hope that those fans are going to be satisfied with a front row position. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc seem to be struggling this weekend. In fact, Ferrari seem to be a little bit lost at the moment. Looks like the pole battle will be between the McLarens of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri and the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, but maybe a Mercedes driver, Kimi Antonelli or George Russell, could throw in a curveball. Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see. So yes, as you say, McLaren have certainly been in great form. Piastri and Norris first and second in all 3 free practices, with Piastri first in 2 of them. Norris fastest though in the latest one in FP3, but McLaren 1-2 in all 3. Verstappen was 3rd fastest in the final practice session earlier today, as ever on a Friday, not showing tremendous pace, but once we get into a Saturday and once we get closer to qualifying, Verstappen always seems to demonstrate that. What Antonelli did was impressive, 4th fastest, but as you say, Ferrari were not that strong, with Charles Leclerc 5th fastest earlier today and Lewis Hamilton all the way down in 10th place. And with his remarkably close times again, we had 11 cars covered by a second. We've had actually 13 cars in FP3 covered by a second this year in Australia, but I think we are going to see some remarkably close times, as we have done throughout qualifying this year.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's going to be a story of this particular season, in all honesty. I think it's going to be close all the way through. Today's going to be much of the same. I think it is going to be about getting the good gaps, the clear gaps. It's about nailing a lap when it's very tricky to do so. This is a really precise lap where you have to get things just right. You bump over a curb just by a few centimetres more than you should do, it really unsettles the car. We've seen it over and over in the practice sessions where drivers end up running wide into the gravel, and all of a sudden your lap's ruined. And in qualifying, you don't get too many opportunities to get that right.
Absolutely, and cars already making their way down the pit lane. This doesn't surprise me too much, because although we're not ready for the pit lane to be seeing a green light at the end yet, they want to get into the queue and get out early, and this is going to be absolutely crucial throughout Q1, and particularly when we get into the final section of it, when you want to get at least a second run. Some of the slower teams, of course, they might even do a 3rd run, I suppose, but it's not going to be easy around here to get that clear space that you need. And there could be incidents if we have any yellow or red flags. Of course, that could affect some people who might be up there for getting into the top 10.
Yeah, that's right. So in qualifying, which is different to the practice sessions, if we get a red flag in this particular part of the weekend, the clock does stop. So we do get to sort of save that time if we get an early red flag. But the reality is, you're right, it's about getting in even your first lap out, your first banker lap. It needs to be a good one that's to sort of put in the bank, so that if it does all go wrong later, if you're compromised somewhere later in the session, you've at least got a lap that's hopefully good enough to get you through, for most people, into that second part of qualifying. So you're right, that's why we've got people queuing up in the pit lane. They all want to create their gaps in the pit lane. They're not allowed to do that out on the circuit, and as the light goes green, we see a Sauber, the first car to roll across the line and find their way onto the racetrack. The rest will just hold in the pit lane, creating that gap. As I said, they don't want to get too close to the car in front of them. They'll feed their way out, and if you're right at the back of that queue of 20 cars right now, it could take you a few minutes before you actually find yourself onto the racetrack.
A few minutes indeed. We've got 17 minutes and 38 seconds, 37, 36, 35, 34. If you want to sync up at all, that's the way to do it. And we are about to see Lewis Hamilton heading out onto the circuit. Isaac Hadjar is actually doing a very good job this weekend. One of the top rookies driving for Racing Bulls. He was 7th fastest earlier today. He was also 7th quickest yesterday, although he did have an off at the end of the session. Thankfully, didn't do any damage to the car, so that was okay. And ironically, his teammate had an off earlier on today at the same section, and again, didn't do any damage to it. But I do think we've seen quite a few people putting wheels into the gravel. That's one of the aspects of this Imola circuit, that when you run over the curb, you are into the gravel, and it can easily go wrong in a big way. We've seen Charles Leclerc make mistakes a couple of times in the past here at Imola, and again, even on Friday, we saw him make a few errors by going into the gravel. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, it's a good old school circuit. It's just worth noting, this is probably the last time we're going to be racing at Imola. It's the end of the current contract. It's highly likely that it won't be renewed in favour of newer, more modern circuits that bring different types of audiences, more money in different parts of the world. So this is a real sort of swan song, I guess, for Imola. It's an old school circuit that almost the sport has outgrown a little bit. It's a narrow circuit. It's not particularly long, but it is undulating. It goes up and down. It's in beautiful scenery. It's iconic in so many ways. So much history around here, both good and bad. The drivers, I think, love racing around here, particularly when it comes to this session in qualifying, because it really does bring a Formula One car alive. But it's a tricky place to get a good, exciting race for all those reasons. It's narrow, difficult to overtake, not too many opportunities. So today really is perhaps the highlight of the weekend. It's all about getting a grid slot right, because if you can get a good grid slot, you can quite often here translate that into a great race result.
Quite right. And we've got this new tyre which we're seeing everybody out on at the moment, the soft tyre with the red wall on the tyre, because this is what Pirelli are calling the C6 tyre, which has never actually been competed before. They've tested with it, but it's the first time it's actually done competition, a Grand Prix weekend. We saw it on Friday and it was working pretty well. It did seem to have better pace than the medium compound. Earlier today it looked a little bit harder to get the balance right. Lewis Hamilton just setting off on a lap now, but I think they've been learning how to get a bit more out of these tyres, maybe not work them too hard in sector one.
Yeah, they are the softest in the Pirelli range, and that means you do have to look after them. This is not a particularly abrasive racetrack, so it's not that hard on tyres. A lot of energy going through them, but the surface is not too rough, which we see at other tracks around the world. So, yeah, I think the difference between the medium, what is this weekend's medium, and this weekend's soft tyre, it's not a huge difference. But I think in terms of longevity, the medium and the hard tyre are certainly going to be the two race tyres. Qualifying is going to happen, as it is on this red-walled soft tyres for almost everybody, but getting it right and not overcooking those tyres in the early part of the lap seems to be crucial today.
So only 4 cars have set a time so far. Gabriel Bortoletto fastest at this stage, impressively, and Hamilton's times are being, yes, represented by those, and he's just gone quicker in the second sector as he now comes through the outer chicane. Does that well, uses the curb quite a lot, but the car's stable enough, and then flat out back down the hill and into the final double left-hander at Rivazza. He does run the very edge there, doesn't he?
Yeah, pushed it right to the limit, but I think crucially stayed within that limit. He's going to get that all-important banker lap in that we talked about there. He's just a couple of thousandths slower than Fernando Alonso, so probably not good enough, although that does seem like a reasonable lap from Alonso. There's a lot more time to come from all of these cars yet. We were well deep into the 1:15s in practice earlier on. At the moment, Alex Albon, a 1:16.1 tops the timesheets. So there's a lot more to come as the drivers gradually figure figure out how best to get these tyres working.
Absolutely, and the Williams cars have been showing good performance already here this weekend, no doubt about it. Charles Leclerc's on a decent lap as well now, and let's see whether this is going to put him ahead of Alex Albon. Hamilton is currently third, Sainz is fourth, Bortoleto has now dropped down to fifth place. Leclerc only goes fifth, actually, so it's not a particularly good lap for Charles Leclerc. Hamilton is that little bit quicker at this stage. Getting into the top 15, of course, is what matters. We've still got 10 cars that have not actually set a time yet, so it's still very early days. Max Verstappen out now on the soft tyre as well, and beginning to give us an example. He's just going on to a lap now.
Yeah, so Verstappen and the two McLarens are really going to be of interest on those soft tyres. What can they do? Because I think there's at least another second of lap time to come off the top level times that we've got at the moment from the really fast cars, and Verstappen will be the first of those that we get someone up on the board. He's through the first part of the lap. We'll get a split as he comes through the first sector. Here he goes. I think we're going to find that this is a particularly fast first sector, and it is quarter of a second quicker than anyone else so far. So here come the quick lap times. Let's keep an eye on it.
Well predicted, and interestingly, he doesn't apex Tosa so much, but that sometimes is a way to do it. Around the outside, that seems to work. He's had pole positions the last 2 years. He's had 3 wins, and oh my goodness, and his teammate has gone off, crashed out in a big way. Yuki Tsunoda has hit the barriers, and there is a lot of damage to his car.
It's a red flag, so that brings the session to a halt, and the timing, the clock stops, as I said earlier on. 12 minutes and 13 seconds left still to go. They'll get everyone back, recover that car, and they will get another chance to go again.
My goodness, Yuki Tsunoda has had a big off, damaged both the rear and the front. Right rear is completely bent round to the back of the rear wing. The front wheels are both bent, and he's still in the car at the moment, but he's just moving, and yeah, it looks like he's about to get out of the car. I think he's okay, which is the good news, but that has brought a red flag. 12 minutes to go in Q1, as you say. The timing stops, so that still does give plenty of time, but this will still put pressure on the teams, because there were some people who were on laps just then who haven't set a time. Max Verstappen, for example, we were talking about him, his teammate, and he didn't get to put a lap in. He's now into the pits, so difficult situation. Qualifying underway, but we've got a red flag already. Yuki Tsunoda has just crashed out, and we are just looking at a replay now of what happened. He clipped a curb, bounced the car, and my goodness, that was a big accident. F1 McLaren, former McLaren, joining me alongside, and we've just watched. That was a horrible rollover as well when he hit the barrier, Mark.
A huge accident for Yuki Tsunoda in the sister car to Max Verstappen, the Red Bull. He clipped a curb. The curbs around this circuit are really quite high in places. They're brutal, really aggressive. You've got to be very careful about not going over them, and he did exactly that. The bottom of the car launched off that curb, spat him over it, dug in the gravel, and it did a complete 360. He landed upside down before the car then righted itself, coming off the barriers. There's a huge amount of damage to both the car and the barriers, which all need repairing as well. That will be the final part of any participation in this session for that particular car.
The great thing is he's out of the car. He looks like he's walked away from the car, despite that being a very scary looking accident. He's out, the car has kept him safe, but there is a lot of damage to the Red Bull, and we're just getting a view of the team at the moment as they're looking at what's gone on, and it's always a tough situation for the team when the most important thing, of course, is the driver okay? Well, he is okay, he's got out, although they will check him out, I'm sure, because that will have been such a big hit, and to have gone upside down, the medical crew will check him out after that.
Yeah, there's actually a sensor on board the car that's triggered when the car sees an impact that goes above the sort of G-force threshold, which that one absolutely would have done, and it mandates that you have to go to the medical centre to be checked out. We're just seeing the wreckage that's been left behind. I mean, Yuki is out of the car, as we said. He's okay, and he's on his way to the medical centre now, but the car is a real mess. There's not really too much of a drama in terms of getting that car repaired for tomorrow. It might mean that the team might have a late night. They might end up breaking the curfew. There's an awful lot of work to do. I guess on the slight positive, if you really want one, is they can break break Parc Fermé rules now. They could set that car up solely for the race as opposed to the compromise that you would always have to make for qualifying. But that'll be very small consolation, given that he will start right at the back and almost certainly from the pit lane.
I feel for Yuki too, because he's been based, although he's a Japanese driver, he's been based here at this part of Italy for many years now.
Yeah.
This is his local area, and for him to have gone out in the first part of qualifying like that is really...
And do you know what? The Red Bull struggles continue, don't they, in that department? Because these are the sort of mistakes, and it is a mistake that looked like a mistake. I mean, we'll always caveat that with you never know if something happened on the car, so there is always that possibility. But these things happen to the other driver in that Red Bull car. They don't tend to happen to Max Verstappen. When was the last time we saw Max Verstappen make a major mistake in a really competitive session like that? It's been a long time, and this is the problem Red Bull have had. They're cycling through drivers because they can't find someone who can deliver performance consistently at a level that's anywhere near what Max is able to do.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to wait and see how this goes. So, yeah, it is difficult. So we'll just see how this goes. We've got a bit of a session stop now for a little bit, and of course with the barriers still to be repaired, I wonder how long this is going to take, because they definitely need to get those redone, don't they?
Yeah, they need to recover the car, of course, to make the circuit safe, but they also need to repair those crash barriers so that they will have the same required impact in terms of energy absorption if there were to be another recurrence similar to that one. So they need to put the barriers back into basically the same state they were at the beginning of the session, and that is no small feat. So yeah, a lot of work to do. It means everyone else sat back in their garages just waiting for some sort of announcement from race control as to when this session will get going again.
Well, it's certainly good for Alex Albon at the moment, being fastest from Fernando Alonso. That is a bit of a surprise 1-2. Lewis Hamilton currently third, Carlos Sainz fourth, Charles Leclerc fifth, Bortoletto in sixth place, Lance Stroll seventh, Ollie Behrman in eighth place. If you're with us on Radio 5 Live, we're going to go off to John Hunt at Newbury. If you're with us on Sports Extra, we will be continuing with our F1 coverage. So we are still on for the start of this session in a few minutes, but we're not quite sure how long it's going to take. The drivers are staying in their cars in the garages right now, and they're waiting for the time to be told as to when they can get going. Peter Sauber is here this weekend, which is rather lovely. It's the 600th Grand Prix start for this team under various different names, but he was the man who created this. He's now in his early 80s, yet he's still obviously enjoying being here this weekend and keeping an eye on it. Now, we're just seeing some images of Yuki Tsunoda's car being taken away from the track, so that's being done. They've done that very rapidly. The marshals, as ever, doing a fantastic job. Whether they've got still some work to do on the barrier, I'm not too sure yet, but they will be dealing with it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and look, we talked at the start of this session about the importance of getting a banker lap in, and we've only got 10 cars that have managed to do that. It is Albon quickest from Alonso at the moment, but Hamilton's up there. We've got Sainz. The two Williams have both got a lap in. The two Ferraris have got a lap in. Bortoletto, the two Aston Martins as well, and the two Haas cars. So we've got 10 cars that have a lap. That means, though, that with 12 minutes on the clock, everybody now needs to go back out, and they don't have the luxury of being able to spread themselves out over a longer session. It's now like a really short session where everyone is desperate to get on circuit and find those gaps. So the problems we talked about at the beginning of this session have just been exacerbated by the sort of limited amount of time we have left.
You're absolutely right, and this is going to really pick things up for everybody. And the fact that the three fastest from earlier today, Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, haven't set laps yet, it's a tough one. Antonelli, we've just been looking at him in the garage in his car. He hasn't set a time yet either, and yet he was pretty rapid earlier on today. So let's wait and see how this all works out as we go through the rest of this session.
And Verstappen was on a fast lap when that red flag came out, so he's effectively taken the best out of one of his sets of soft tyres, and they are limited with those, so that wasn't ideal for him.
So we're just waiting for the red flag to be cleared still here at Imola as we await for Q1 to get back underway with some 12 minutes to go, with just 10 cars having set a pace so far. And now we're just getting some images of the repairs being done to the barriers. The main section of that barrier is still okay, actually, so hopefully it's not going to take too long to sort out.
Well, it's a tyre barrier as opposed to sort of an Armco, a metallic barrier, which tends to take a little bit longer to fix. So, yeah, it looks like a great job done by the marshals. We'll get a notification from race control very soon, I'm sure, to give a restart time, but everyone in their garage is now just waiting for that. We got a replay of exactly what happened to Tsunoda, and it was just crashing over the curbs, and as he landed back over that curve that he hit a little bit too heavily, it just unsettled the car. This is at high speed, a high speed change of direction, which then put him off course for the second part of that little chicane. He found himself into the gravel, and as the wheels dug into the gravel at very high speed, he careered into the barriers, which spat him up into the air, flipped the car over, and it landed upside down before righting itself.
So he's had an accident at turn 5.
He's okay.
He's okay.
And Verstappen had to slow down on what was a quick lap for him. Right, let's go back to some rugby now with James Burridge. There are a few comments coming from drivers asking whether he was okay, because it really was a big accident.
Oh my God, I just saw the video.
Yeah, big crash.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he's okay. He's out of the car.
And that was Liam Lawson talking on radio to his team. And it's, you know, we've said there's been a lot of incidents here at Imola, and of course some of the saddest incidents, the loss of Ayrton Senna, Ron Ratzenberger here at Imola, desperately sad. I have to say though that the safety of these modern Formula One cars, when you saw that accident and the way it spun up and over, and yet he's been able to just step away, the modern safety, so good.
100%. That was an enormous accident. You know, make no mistake, I don't think we can describe it well enough to do justice just how big a crash that was, and yet he has walked away. These safety cells that the driver's now enclosed within, so strong, so well designed. The halo, of course, as well. This car, Yuki Tsunoda's car, ended up upside down. The halo doing a really good job, and all of the components, the high cockpit sides, the construction of these things as well, just protecting the driver in such an impressive way these days that you know, we almost take that for granted. But Yuki Tsunoda walking away, which is great to see. There's a lot of work to do in his car, and we have now got an estimated time of resumption, which is in about 3 minutes' time.
Absolutely, and so engines are beginning to fire up as we are seeing the teams getting ready. Let's bring our F1 correspondent for BBC Sports, Andrew Benson, back in. Andrew, it's always a scary moment to see an accident like that, but the great news is that he is okay. Yuki Tsunoda stepping away from the car, and we're still getting into what is going to be a very serious qualifying session here.
Indeed, we've had a message from the FIA saying he's been taken to the medical centre, which is mandatory when you've had a big accident above a certain impact level. Apparently the light panel, which is what they show, the sort of like the warning flag are represented also on a light panel. That's also been damaged at that corner by the accident, which gives you an idea of how high the car got in the air, because the light panel is up above ground level, obviously quite significantly above ground level, so the drivers can see it. Not seen an accident that big for quite some time, have we? I don't think. Well, I mean, upside down, landing upside down, it's an illustration, I think, of how important the halo head protection device has become in Formula One, because who knows what would have happened. We can't see because the camera angles weren't right. We don't know how the car exactly came down, but it came down upside down onto the barrier and the ground. So very lucky for Yuki Tsunoda that he seems to be okay walking off across the gravel trap there. I have to say that Mark's been talking about a banker lap. Obviously Tsunoda was pushing too hard for a, quote, banker lap. Here's Colapinto's radio.
I've no idea. He got a hold sign.
So what do I do?
Sorry, mate. That was meant to be a hold. That wasn't a full release. We were just going to creep out.
I go to a light or not?
Yeah, just go to the light now.
some argument at Alpine about pit lane exit protocol there. Just coming back to Yuki Tsunoda, let's not forget, he was 1.1 seconds slower than Max Verstappen in practice earlier today. And although you'd expect a Red Bull to be relatively comfortably out of Q1, for him that wasn't the case because he was down in 17th place. So that's why he was pushing so hard. He was thinking, I could be getting knocked out here. I really don't want to be knocked out. Of course, the first flying lap is the wrong time to be doing that, but he might have thought he wasn't pushing that hard, but he caught the curb wrong. He got a little bit of air under the car, like we saw with both Racing Bull cars in the course of this weekend already. They had spins and one crash for Isaac Hadjar at the Tamburello chicane, which is the one before Villeneuve where Tsunoda crashed. But very similar, all three accidents, getting the curb, the car gets a little bit up in the air, driver loses complete control, and in Tsunoda's case he skated across the gravel trap into the barrier and then had the accident we've been describing for the last few minutes.
Yeah, just great to see him walk away from it, as we said earlier on. But yeah, big differences between some of the teams. Verstappen looking like he could well be in a position to take a front row seat here.
I thought it was a release.
Yeah, that wasn't clear to you, I'm sorry.
Still talking about the communication dramas down at Alpine. So that's Franco Colapinto, who it's his first race weekend with the Alpine team, and just some of the protocols about how you release the car from the garage to position yourself in the pit lane. They seem to have just got a little bit confused about that. Everyone now lined up behind a red light that is about to turn green, and there it goes, and it is one of the Alpines that works their way out of the pit lane first onto the circuit.
Yeah, it is Colapinto, in fact. So whether he was meant to be the first out, but actually that's a good place to be, to get out early in a way. Although once you get all of these cars out, by the time he actually does the lap and starts on a quick lap, there might even still be some have only just joined. So we are getting into a session now, under 12 minutes to go, where everybody is trying to get into the top 15 when there are 20 cars on track, and it can easily mean that you get held up at a key moment around the circuit. So that's what we'll be watching for, of course. Liam Lawson just heading out in his Racing Bulls car at this point, and it is going to be busy out on track. There are a few of those that set their laps earlier that have not come out just yet, but Lewis Hamilton, third fastest currently, is sitting in the pit lane waiting to go, and it does seem as though they're all going out quite carefully, quite slowly.
Well, the guys that did set a lap, although they won't be happy with that lap, there's a lot more time still to come. At least they've got something on the board, and so they can probably, some of them, at least accept that one more flying lap might be enough to just fine-tune what they did first time round. Those who didn't get the lap in earlier on, well, they really ideally would like to get 2 runs in just to fine-tune the car. This is the first time they've been out since practice, and then go for the full flying lap perhaps on a second run. But now with only 10 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock, they may not have that luxury.
No, that's right. They've got to make sure that whatever lap they get out there now, they do a really good one. Just watching Isaac Hadjar, who hasn't set a lap in this session yet, but was quick in both the session we had this morning and yesterday afternoon. So we'll see how that does go for Isaac Hadjar. Racing Bulls, they often have a car that goes well here, and of course for them it is a track that's local to them, for a team that was originally Minardi before it got bought by Red Bull in the early 2000s, and so they have a factory nearby here. There is an incident regarding Colapinto.
Yeah, I can tell you what that is as well, because it happened recently to someone else. I think it was Mercedes. They actually, in that confusion we were talking about between engineers and drivers, they released Colapinto's car. This is why he was at the front of the queue, before we got the official announcement from race control about when the session would resume. And there is a directive, a rule that says you're not allowed to do that. Everyone must stay in the garage until they announce the restart time, then you're allowed to come out. It sounds like he must have come out before that time was announced, and that's why he ended up at the very front of the queue.
You're listening to Qualifying on Radio 5 Live and on Sports Extra with Ben Edwards, Mark Priestley and Andrew Benson. And at the moment, Alex Albon is the fastest, who set the time before we had the red flag when Yuki Tsunoda crashed out in a nasty way, but thankfully is okay. Albon is currently fastest from Fernando Alonso. Would you expect that? No, you wouldn't. Colapinto, who we know is going to be investigated, has just set a good lap, the first one to set a lap since the session has got back underway. He's actually gone third fastest, but that's put him ahead of Hamilton of all people. So that's actually quite impressive. But we are going to see a lot of improvements, I think, coming up in the next few minutes.
Yeah, the lap times that are currently leading the leaderboard as things stand, it's Albon with a 16.1, is still around about a second off what we saw just earlier today on the same tyres, on the same circuit. There's a tiny bit of variation in the track temperature. It's still fluctuating a little tiny bit. Wind direction, it is low, not particularly significant, has changed direction a little bit, but the sort of speed of that, velocity of the wind, is not great enough to make major differences. So I think there's a lot more time to come. We still haven't seen the McLarens on track. We still haven't seen a Verstappen complete a lap. He was on a good one, and even after the very first sector of the lap, he was a quarter of a second quicker than Albon had been able to go. So there's a lot more time to come, and I expect those front runners to deliver upon that very soon.
Absolutely, I do agree with that. We're on board at the moment listening to Ollie Behrman at this stage, who's just done a pretty good second sector at this point, but we are going to see a lot of changes, a lot of moves up and down the order. We've still got plenty who haven't set a lap yet. Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, still no times done as yet. It's Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, 1-2 for Williams at this point. So the Williams coming back again with the other one, Carlos Sainz, and they are 3-all at the moment in terms of qualifying. The pair of them, they are showing good form with how the Williams has developed. Kimi Antonelli, the youngster driving for Mercedes, he's on a good lap, and Pierre Gasly, who's been showing some good performances at certain times this weekend. Let's see what he does. As he comes over the line, he does go fastest. Good effort by Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, good lap. Takes the top of the timesheets right now. Verstappen, though, is on a decent one. We've got Kimi Antonelli on a decent lap as well. Alonso's put in something quite quick. So the times are tumbling. The two McLaren guys are just starting their flying laps, I think, right now. So I think we're about to see things really start to change it up. Verstappen's gone quicker than anyone in the first sector, which he did first time round, but then was caught out by that red flag. He's gone quick again in the second sector, so he's already nearly 3.5 tenths up on the top times right now. I think these times are going to start changing very, very quickly.
I think you're right. And Kimi Antonelli's just done a good job. He's gone third fastest, but it's George Russell, his teammate from Mercedes, who will be coming over the line next. And Verstappen not far behind as Russell goes second fastest. He is still behind Fernando Alonso, though, who's done that fantastic lap. But now Verstappen does go fastest by half a second. Fastest in the first and third sectors, not the quickest in the middle sector. But Verstappen has taken top spot. Lewis Hamilton is on a lap. He's still got the final double left-hander still to go through, where we always see him using plenty of curve on the outside. A former winner here at Imola, of course.
Yeah, that was a really good lap from Max Verstappen. The two McLarens at the moment look close, but not quite able to match that. Lando Norris only good enough for fifth fastest on his first run around, 7 tenths off Verstappen. So
wow.
Verstappen's managed to put in a lap that was something very equivalent, very close to what Lando Norris was able to achieve this morning, but certainly on these first runs, it's advantage Max Verstappen.
It is, and let's see what Piastri does then in the other McLaren. He does go second fastest, so that is once again a good effort by Piastri. Still 3 tenths away from Verstappen though, and around here 3 tenths is actually a big gap.
It's a lot. Let's not forget this is only Q1, and the objective here is just to get through inside the top 15. So the front runners really are about finding their feet, finding how the car's different to the way it may have felt this morning. They're all getting that information as they go around their push laps right now. But let's take nothing away from the fact that Verstappen has really been able to pull that car together after a difficult Friday. Not the smoothest Saturday morning either, but when it matters once again, Verstappen looks like he's looking good.
And also, what is happening with Fernando Alonso?
Yeah, I know.
Third fastest now. He's used 2 sets of new tyres to do that. So he's run 1 set with his first lap, which we talked about earlier. He's put on another new set for this second run, which happened after the red flag. Most of the others are either on used tyres or on their first set of tyres, or when I say used, they might have done half a run or something like Verstappen's had done. Even so, for an Aston Martin to be anywhere near that sort of height in the times is extremely unusual this year. And also, just to put it into perspective, Lance Stroll, Alonso's teammate, has also used 2 sets of tyres, but he is 6 tenths slower than Alonso in the second Aston Martin and down in 12th place. So I don't know what's going to happen now for Aston Martin, because the car's been so slow this year that they've been using 3 sets of new tyres in Q1. And it looks like maybe they were thinking of doing that going into this session, but maybe they shouldn't do that now. The car's so quick.
We're seeing some replays of some of the drivers running right over the edges, just touching the gravel. Most of them so far have done it without actually losing too much time. Charles Leclerc, typically, as ever, just touching the gravel through the Variante Alta chicane, where he nearly always seems to touch the gravel. But Lando Norris did make a little error too, didn't he?
Yeah, we saw where he lost a huge chunk of that 7/10 that he's currently missing from the lap time of Max Verstappen, and it was around turn 7 where he got a massive snap of oversteer midway through the corner. So yeah, there's more time to come from that McLaren, but it felt like the rear tyres just not being able to live with the demand that he was asking of them, getting on the throttle, spinning the rear wheels up, snapping the rear end around, and that of course affects him down the next little straight that followed.
Now, it's been predicted that a 1:15.9 is the time that you need to make sure you get through into the next part. I can tell you that means that everybody apart from the top 4 are in danger at the moment, because if you go to George Russell, 4th fastest, he's on a 1:15.8, but Pierre Gasly in 5th, a 1:15.9. So we could see a huge change in this final part, but we might get another red flag. Who knows?
Yeah, and we've only got 3 minutes left on the clock. We know, we've already talked about how crucial traffic's going to be. Finding that right gap is going to be really, really difficult.
That was a big impeding from Sauber. Okay, copy.
This will, of course, all be checked out. What Antonelli was talking about was how he had to hit the brakes during the pit lane because the Saubers came out just ahead of him. And, of course, this will be looked into, whether the teams are playing the game correctly or not. So that can have an effect afterwards. Those usually are things that are researched afterwards. But right now, Max Verstappen is the fastest with 2.5 minutes to go in this first part of qualifying. In the drop zone at the moment, we have both Saubers, Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto. We have both Haas cars, Ollie Behrman and Esteban Ocon, and of course we have Yuki Tsunoda, who crashed out earlier. Yeah,
and it's not going to be much. The difference between getting through into the top 15 and not is highly likely to be tiny margins, small amounts. Confirmation that Hülkenberg will be investigated, or at least noted by the FIA race control for an unsafe release that we talked about with Kimi Antonelli. This is going to be an intense 1.5 minutes now. The closing couple of moments of the first Q1 session, trying to get into the top 15. The margins are going to be tiny. Verstappen's probably safe. The 2 McLarens, certainly Piastri, very safe at the moment. Behind that, though, you'd say everybody still has to find time.
It's a big day in Formula 1, but it's an even bigger day in football. The FA Cup final on Radio 5 Live from 4 p.m. Right now, we're still enjoying the first part of qualifying with just 1.5 minutes to go. Verstappen looking reasonably safe up front, Piastri up there, but behind, it really could be anybody, I think. Of course, it's not going to be Yuki Tsunoda, who is okay, but had a huge accident early part of this session. Who else is going to make it into the top 15? It does look as though the Saubers are struggling a little bit. We've got both cars out there at the moment. They're on clear laps, and Bortoleto of the pairing is going to be first across the line. He's improving all the way around. Let's see where he goes. Well, he goes 15th. That's not really going to be safe, is it?
No, and his teammate is going to... his teammate's gone wide. His teammate ran wide at turn 18, dipped it into the gravel like we've seen so many drivers do, and that's compromised the end of his lap. And he was actually on a lap that was improving. Unfortunately, that's mean he's lost by half a second, and he still remains in the drop zone.
So Norris has just done another lap, but he's only improved by 1/10, and he's only just under that projected cut-off time of 15.894. Meanwhile, the Aston Martins have both gone out on medium tyres for this final run.
That's interesting. Thank you very much, Andrew. Out on the medium tyres, and that doesn't surprise me too much that one of the teams is trying that, particularly when they did such a good job. We'll see. Alonso is already third fastest. He's got a yellow flag out on track, so that could be hurting somebody. They may have to back off, obviously, if they... Oh, yes, it's one of the Alpines that has gone off, and it is Colapinto, Franco Colapinto, the driver taking over from Jack Doohan. He's crashed. He has crashed. He says he's okay on radio. And that is the second car, and that is the end of this session. So now we know, and ironically, Colapinto 15th fastest, but he will not be into Q2. It means that we've lost Bortoleto, Liam Lawson, Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, and Yuki Tsunoda.
Now, I hate to say this, but Flavio Briatore, the effective Alpine team boss, said about Colapinto, all he's got to do is go fast and not crash. First qualifying session.
That is
failed his boss's ambitions.
That is a great shame to see from Colapinto, because we know that he's in this team for a while now, and well, we haven't seen the replay yet. He is about to get out of the car. He is okay, which is the good news, but this is a tough one for the youngster coming back into Formula One.
It's such a brutal introduction, isn't it, to this sport sometimes for these young drivers. The pressure's so high, it feels like they don't get very much time in which to deliver something that really, you know, sets up the rest of their career. The pressure they're under is huge, and I think look, we'll talk you through the incident as soon as we see a replay, because we haven't seen it yet, but it's the last thing that he needed. Yes, he'll start the race, you know, in fact he may even have to start the race in the pit lane depending on the damage to that car and what condition they end up rebuilding it in, but it's not the way his weekend needed to go. We talked earlier on about he needed to make a clean weekend from start to finish. That's the thing that team's been missing with Jack Doohan. They needed that from Franco Colapinto. Of course they wanted to be quick, but they really needed him to just progress all the way through, delivering solid results all weekend. Here comes the replay, so talk us through it then.
Well, let's have a look, because he was coming down into the first chicane, braking, turns into the first part, okay, second part, runs wide, wheel over the curb, into the grass, bang, into the barrier, smacks the front end, and that is the end of that.
Yeah, sorry.
You okay, buddy? You okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, so
As long as you're okay.
Well, he is okay. So that is what's happened. That's brought out the red flag in this session. For those of you with Radio 5 Live, it's time for some for FA Cup final news. Let's go for that. And here on Sports Extra, we're taking a look as Colapinto gets out of the car, and he's just getting out slowly, but I think he's looking okay, and it's the second red flag of this qualifying session that has now ended that, and so we have seen who's made it. Flavio Briatore watching, and everybody, of course, always concerned that their driver will be okay, but that is a tough one for Colapinto, no doubt about it.
Yeah, we had red flags in the practice sessions on Friday. We've had another 2 already in this qualifying session today. It is very, very tough. He dipped a wheel into the grass. This is an old school circuit. It doesn't have tarmac runoff areas. There's grass and gravel and then walls. We've seen Yuki Tsunoda already find his way through that gravel in a massive crash in Q1 that found him sitting upside down as he hit the wall. And now Franco Colapinto on his debut for the Alpine team, just hitting the wall after a big spin across the gravel and grass, and that's the end of his session as well. So really, really difficult. The session the session won't continue, of course, because we are down the clock down to 0. So as you said, Ben, we've got the 5 that have dropped out. We move on to Q2, and I think there'll be a few people that will breathe a real big sigh of relief, the fact that red flag meant they didn't have to fight for their lives to get into that the next part of qualifying.
Absolutely. We're just having a replay of Nico Hülkenberg's error when he ran too wide. Right, he had a fraction of correction through the first part of the final Rivazza corner, didn't he? He had to deal with that, and that put him out wide, sadly. But interestingly, as you say, in a way, what this red flag has done has helped his teammate, Gabriel Bortoleto, because we thought, he hadn't gone quick enough to make it. But actually, because so many couldn't improve because of the red flag, Gabriel Bortoleto has out-qualified Hülkenberg and has gone into Q2.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think...
So we shall see how that goes. Thank you very much. Yes, we're looking forward to the next part of qualifying getting underway, but it has been pretty dramatic in Q1 already, with 2 major accidents, particularly for Yuki Tsunoda, who's okay, as is the youngster Franco Colapinto, coming back into Formula One for his first event of 2025, and now he's crashed out. And ironically, he was quick enough to go through to the second part of qualifying, but clearly now we're only going to have 14 cars in Q2. The ones that are definitely out: Liam Lawson, Nico Hülkenberg, the 2 Haas cars. Esteban Ocon actually was quicker than Ollie Behrman today, which he hadn't been over much of the weekend, but you can't actually really look at that and say, oh, that's the times they did, because they didn't get a chance to really get their times in at the end there because of Colapinto's accident. It really hurt a lot of people, didn't put in a representative time. But we do know who's going to be into the next part, and the key players are, because the McLarens are both in, Verstappen's in, the Ferraris are in. We didn't actually get anyone drop out who we thought was going to be challenging up front.
No, Red Bull will be, sorely disappointed that Tsunoda didn't manage to make his way through, especially, just anyway, obviously, but especially because the qualifying position, the position you start this race from, is so crucial when it comes to race day. They would have loved to have him a little bit further up the grid. The only man, I would say, that looked comfortable in that session was Max Verstappen. Even the two McLarens, although they've sailed through, they're quite comfortable in getting into the final part, the next part. They weren't comfortable in their laps. They didn't manage to maximise what the car was capable of. The only man who came anywhere close to that was indeed Max Verstappen, which will give him some confidence.
Absolutely. Well, we are into round 7 of the FIA Formula 1 World Championship, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola, first in Europe this season. My name is Ben Edwards, alongside me Mark Priestley and Andrew Benson, and this qualifying session is all important because we know that overtaking at this track is very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's not easy, and therefore qualifying that continues. We've had Q1, we've still got Q2 and Q3 to go to put the whole grid together, but it is crucial to the top runners scoring points on race day to be qualifying right up at the front end. But what we are seeing today, Mark, is these incidents. Both Yuki Tsunoda, who's a pretty experienced driver, but teammate, of course, to Max Verstappen at Red Bull, so always feeling under pressure, and also one of the rookies, a rookie who's back in Formula 1 for the first time, in Franco Colapinto, both making accidents. And it's not impossible we're going to see more errors in the qualifying that comes up. And there was just a little bit of rain in the distance, not much, but that might make a difference too.
Yeah, it's not very far away from the circuit. There is definite rain falling from some dark clouds, and we don't know which direction that might move, but there's rain around this racetrack. It's not necessarily a high risk of it hitting and interrupting the session itself, but it's not very far away, and a small change in wind or a small change in wind speed could easily turn that into a potential threat for everybody. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. But I think this is a really difficult time for youngsters to come into the sport. With the modern cars, they're actually quite tricky to drive. They're certainly tricky to drive very quickly on the limit. They're so stiffly sprung. They seem to bite you when you get it wrong very quickly. They're not very forgiving. And so when drivers are so desperate to make an impact and push to the limit and beyond to try and make a lap time that sort of sets up their future careers and gives them some sort of credibility in this sport, they're often so frequently finding themselves beyond those limits and in trouble.
Just seeing on board with Ollie Behrman as he came over the line and took the checkered flag. Was that just before the red came out? Yes.
Why am I last on the thing?
Yeah, we're checking our loop.
On the board, I didn't drill up now, so...
Yeah, we're checking it.
The red flag was already out.
We'll get ready to go anyway.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one, because I did wonder if there'd been a bit of a... I think he'd done a quicker lap, but they've taken it away because they assumed he had crossed the line.
Well, the onboard there we just showed that as he took the checkered flag, the red light was already on, which means he can't officially finish that lap. So
right.
Although it looked like a good lap, you're right, that lap's been deleted, I think, or it certainly wasn't counted, and he finds himself at the back in the drop zone.
Yeah, maybe the team are having a discussion to find out whether did he not just cross the line before the red came out, but they will have to sort that out. In the meantime, we have got a time for when this is going to start again in just over 4 minutes time. This Q2 session will be underway, and some spectators have a very interesting view of being hung up in the air to watch what's going on. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's I've seen this around in different places, dining in the sky, where they essentially hang a massive dining room table from a crane, but it does give you a wonderful vantage point to watch an event like this, as long as it's not too windy.
Absolutely. Lando Norris is going to be into the next part of qualifying, of course. He's had the one pole position this year. That was the season opener in Australia, but he hasn't had a pole since. Oscar Piastri's had a couple of poles, but it's Max Verstappen who has often been the successful one in this track as well. So he's had 3 poles this year. He's had 2 poles over the last 2 years here. Whether he's going to be able to grab it or not, we shall wait and see. Gabriel Bortoleto will be going again for Sauber.
Yeah, if you think back to the Japanese Grand Prix, it was a situation not dissimilar to this, where Max Verstappen put in an unbelievable qualifying lap, managed to grab pole position, and then spent the race effectively benefiting from the clear air, but ultimately holding everyone else back. You know, the McLarens, who had the faster car on the day, unable to find their way past. We could easily find a situation like that happening on this particular circuit, because there are similarities. It's a great, wonderful racetrack, particularly for qualifying, but when it comes to race day, the overtaking opportunities are really quite tricky and few and far between. So getting yourself in front, if Max can do that today, even though we assume that the McLaren will be stronger on race day, as it has been most of the season, it might be qualifying that really makes a difference.
Absolutely right. And of course, Lando Norris just missed out on winning this last year, because he was chasing Max around the last few laps and got very close but couldn't get past him. But I think what was also surprising was that lap time, as you mentioned, that Max did in that first qualifying session that we had, a 1:15.1, which was actually quite a bit quicker than Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. So suddenly the McLarens, which were first and second in all 3 practice sessions, it looks like they're struggling a little bit more in that session. Now, they may get it back together again in Q2 because they've been here before, but as you say, qualifying, getting that McLaren to work in qualifying is not always as easy as it is having the race pace out of it.
Yeah, I think, you know, on one hand I would say that the Red Bull always takes a step forward, whether they turn engines and power units up, they always take something forward when it comes to it. Max, I think, steps up himself as well. But what's notable there is that lap time Max has done was pretty much the lap time Lando did in FP3 when they were doing their qualifying runs earlier on today. So we know that that's the sort of pace McLaren has. So it's not necessarily that Max Verstappen has taken a giant leap forward, but almost that McLaren have taken a bit of a step back, so it seems at this point. And there's a long way to go, so things could still turn around, but Max Verstappen the more comfortable at this point.
We did see the McLarens run wide, didn't we, Ben?
Yes, we did.
So Norris's lap has clearly not been clean, because he's down in 6th place, 7/10 off the pace. Piastri's second, but just over 3/10 off Verstappen, but he was one of the ones I think went over the curb at
just
Piratella,
a little
is that
bit,
right?
Yeah. I don't think it would have cost him much, but it could have cost him a little bit. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Whereas Max did a perfect lap, really, because it's never easy not to run wide around this track, and he put a perfect lap together just to get that time, didn't he?
Yeah, and I just want to mention the Aston Martins again. So we remember they went out on medium tyres on that final run. Alonso didn't get a lap time in, so he stayed 3rd. Lance Stroll did get a lap time on his mediums, and he's vaulted up to 4th behind Alonso. So obviously they've got a big upgrade on the Aston Martin this weekend. A new floor is the main bit, also a new engine cover. Now, obviously, Adrian Newey joined the team in March, and he admitted in a team interview that was published on their website that he, in his words, has been having chats over lunch with the team who are doing 2025 design work on this car. So I wonder whether that upgrade package has been influenced by Adrian in any way. And also, more to the point, I wonder, what's it going to mean for Aston Martin for the rest of this session? Are they going to be able to stay in the top 10? Is this going to be potentially a turning point for their season? Let's see how the rest of the qualifying session goes.
It's almost inconceivable to think that someone like Adrian goes into Aston Martin and can't help but tinker with what's been laid out in front of him, isn't it? So you'd have to expect there must be some influence somewhere in that, and let's hope that they can manage to sort of unlock a bit more performance from that car, because it's been hugely disappointing in the way they've started this season. Of course, Adrian's focus is mainly going to be on the 2026 regulations, and that's why they've paid an astronomical sum of money to bring him into the organisation. They see an opportunity there, as do lots of the other teams, but it's Adrian who's been the best in history of exploiting particularly new regulation cycles. They would hope he's going to be able to do that again.
Yeah, that interview that came out on the website this week was quite interesting, because until now Aston Martin have really been emphasising that Newey's concentration is all on the 2026 car. He didn't want to get involved in the 2025 car. 26 was their main focus. They're becoming the Honda Works team. In 26, of course, there's a whole new regulation package for both cars and engines for next year. Of course he's going to focus on that, Mark, isn't he? But you're absolutely right. We both know Adrian well enough to know that competition runs through him so powerfully. And I think if he saw some things on this car that he could affect potentially quite quickly, some easy wins if you like. I don't think he'd be able to resist being able turning around and saying, look, just have a look at this, have a look at that, maybe try this, try that. And I suspect if this is a turning point, and we don't know that it is, I don't want to overplay it at this stage, but if it is, sooner or later the truth is going to come out as to how much Adrian Newey had an influence on these upgrades that they've introduced this weekend.
Yeah.
Well, let's see how this all goes. We are going to be getting this session underway in just a few moments' time, and Q2 to establish the top 10 that will be going in. And if Aston Martin, as you guys were talking about, if they can get into the top 10, it'll be the first time this year that they've managed to do that in Grand Prix qualifying. So we'll see if either or both do actually manage to do that. Be very, very interesting. Ferrari, can they find a bit more pace here with so much support in Italy and close to the Ferrari base? Is that going to be an opportunity for Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton? We shall see.
Yeah, intriguing. It's also quite interesting, I think, that as you said, Lance Stroll put the medium tyre on and went more quickly. We saw some of that happening this morning. Even Pirelli, after the practice sessions this morning, have revised what they see as the performance delta, the gap between the soft tyre and the medium, and they actually put it almost at nothing in terms of lap time difference between the soft tyre and the medium. That's interesting in itself, in that this is a very soft tyre, the C6, the softest tyre Pirelli have bought. You'd imagine it's an all-out qualifying tyre that should bring ultimate performance but not have the longevity. The medium tyre actually looks like it's almost, at least in these conditions, almost on a par in terms of the lap time it can deliver. The teams will have to use that in the race tomorrow. They'll probably start the race on it, so they will hope that although the lap time is similar to the C6, to the soft tyre, that they will be able to get a number of more laps into this race before having to make their first pit stop, because making this a one-stop race is the goal of every team in that pit lane, because of factors like a very long pit lane. That means your pit lane lost time is huge, around about 27, 28, 29 seconds, something like that. The overtaking opportunities are few and far between, as we've said, so you don't want to drop back into the pack because that can cost you. So there's so many reasons why you want to make this a one-stop race, but the fact that the medium and the soft tyre don't look like they've got too much difference in performance will be a question of over the longevity of that when it comes to race day.
Well, bear in mind, if you're on Radio 5 Live, we'll be going to the FA Cup final build-up at 4 p.m. If you're on Sports Extra, we will be continuing with all the news coming out of qualifying just after the checkered flag. We'll be staying with it for another 10-15 minutes just to see how it all has been put together. But there is so much to enjoy this afternoon either way around, football or F1. And we've got this second part of qualifying due to come underway in just a few seconds' time, and then we will be into the battle once again.
Just seeing actually a note from race control. We talked earlier on about the confusion over Ollie Behrman's lap time towards the end. He crossed the line. It looked to me like the red light was on as he took the checkered flag, but it does note that race control are going to review that. That means they'll have a closer look at some of the data, some of the onboard footage. But the problem's going to be, of course, he's effectively out of the qualifying session right now, having finished in the bottom 5. They're about to get Q2 underway. They need to make that decision very, very quickly if they're going to adjust it.
Yeah, the thing is that the start of Q2, although the FIA originally said it was going to start at 16:46 local time, so that's 15:46 in the UK, they've delayed it again, and they haven't given it a restart time yet. So they do have time to go over Oliver Behrman's data more closely. Of course, they do still have a deadline because qualifying 2 will start at some point. They can't keep going forever, but it can't be that hard to work out, right, when did he cross the line, when did the red light
I mean,
go
the
on?
onboard looked very clear to me as he took the checkered flag, which I'm assuming the checkered flag is positioned at the finish line. I'll take someone else's view that may not be the case, but if it was, the red light was on.
Yeah, well, that is as simple as that. The red light stroke flag, because the drivers get an indication in their cockpit, as well as the flags beside the track and the red light warning boards that we mentioned in the context of Tsunoda's accident. They all go on at the same time, so they'll have a time for that. They'll have a time that Behrman crossed the line. He either did or didn't cross the line before the red flag happened. It can't be that hard to work out.
No, you would think that would be sorted out very quickly, but well, whether that's causing the delay, I don't know, but because I'm not seeing anything else just yet, but there may be other reasons for the delay for this second part of qualifying to get underway, and everybody just waiting, building up the adrenaline to what on earth is going to come when we've had 2 accidents, one very major accident already for Yuki Tsunoda, who did get out of the car okay, but for Red Bull, of course, they've got the man who set the pace ultimately in that first part of qualifying in Max Verstappen, but their other driver having a horrendous accident. He's okay, but the car is going to need so much work done, and it may be, I mean, unlike the old days for you when you were mechanicking, Mark, for McLaren, when he would often work overnight, they do get the exceptions. That's that they get, is it 2 or 3 Grand Prix over the course of the season where they can say, right, we do have to do a very late night run to get the car fixed this time.
Yeah, so the rules mandate a curfew by which time, so it's a time that's fixed at each Grand Prix by which everybody has to be out, or everyone working on the car at least has to be out of the garage and out of the paddock. But you're right, you can break that on certain occasions. We do now have a start time, and it's in about 6 minutes time.
Gosh.
So more waiting, but the drivers are still in their cars. But yeah, you're right, there has some exceptions. When you have sort of force majeure like this, you can go to the FIA and say, look, we're going to play our joker card, if you like. We are going to have to stay late, we're going to have to repair the car because otherwise we won't be in the race. I suspect certainly on the Red Bull side of things they may well have to do that.
Absolutely, because in these days, unlike in your day where there's always a spare car, you don't have spare cars in Formula 1 nowadays.
You're not even allowed to have a fully built up spare car, not even tucked away in a truck. So, you know, if you have a huge accident means the chassis needs replacing, you can have enough bits to make up a spare car, but you literally have to put it all together. So a huge amount of work, whichever way you look at it. The car will need a complete strip and then a full rebuild, and that does take a lot of time. Of course, they'll have tomorrow morning as well, but either way, there's pressure on, and probably not as much sleep as they would have hoped tonight.
Yes, not like the old days of Formula 1 when there used to be a practice session early on a Sunday morning before the race took place. They got rid of that idea some time ago now.
Yeah.
But yes, Lance Stroll is sitting in the Aston Martin after an impressive run from Aston Martin with 3rd and 4th fastest in Q1. I think they would be happy if there's no more qualifying today. They'd be very happy indeed if the rain pours down and they had to cancel qualifying. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think they will be going back out. It's just we've got this delay. There is a little bit longer yet before we'll see the cars out onto the track.
And Ollie Behrman still sat in his car because although, according to the timing sheets, he's out of qualifying, only managing to get the 19th quickest time, there is a review going on that we mentioned a few moments ago of his lap time. So he set a lap time that looked like it was good enough to get out of the bottom 5, but then the sort of timing sheets didn't reflect that, and when we looked at the onboard footage, it looked like the red flag that came out as a result of Franco Colapinto having a big accident might have come on, the red lights come on just before he took the checkered flag to finish that lap. But that is under review, and whilst it's under review, Ollie Behrman still sat in the car with his fingers crossed, I'm absolutely sure, in the hope that he might still find a way to get into the next part of qualifying. Yeah,
it would be good for him. He was 19th on the grid in Miami, 15th on the grid in Saudi, 20th on the grid in Bahrain, but he got that 10th place finish, which was impressive. He's had 2 10th place finishes so far this year, Japan as well. He finished it in 10th, but his actual best result was 8th place in China. So it's been one of those seasons for Ollie Behrman, a bit up and down. Of course, he did a brilliant debut last year when he first stood in for Carlos Sainz for Ferrari, and then he did some work for Haas as well. So he's shown some great talent, but I do feel for him right now, thinking that I should be going into the next part of qualifying, but we were not quite sure yet.
Well, it looks like that next part of qualifying is going to get underway in a couple of minutes' time, and we've got the first cars rolling out of the garage to form that queue at the start of the end of the pit lane. They'll wait at a red light, just like the traffic lights that you and I come across on the streets where we drive. There's a red traffic light at the end of that pit lane. They have to queue up behind that, and only at 58 minutes past the hour, which is just under 2 minutes from now, will they be able to go. In days gone by, of course, you couldn't do this. You'd sit at the end of the pit lane for more than 30 seconds, your engine would overheat. But today they've got very clever systems that allow the engines to run on half the cylinders that are available to keep temperatures under control. They can even turn the engines off and restart them using the hybrid systems from inside the car, something else you couldn't do just a few years ago. So a number of ways now that you can go and wait to form your place, to get your place in the queue before the session actually starts.
Yeah, Gabriel Bortoleto right down at the end of the pit lane, as you say, the Brazilian, the 20-year-old, who's now done his 6 Grand Prix of this year so far. His best finished 14th place, and twice now he has out-qualified Nico Hulkenberg, so this will actually be the 3rd time, because Nico out in Q1 So he's doing a good job, and I think that from what I've heard, the team are very happy with what he's done so far. This car is not at the top level, and so for Bortoleto, he hasn't been able to sort of shine because the Sauber car has not been a particularly competitive machine. We know Nico Hülkenberg is a very talented driver. He's done well for Haas in recent years, of course, and now he's with Sauber, and they are struggling this year, there's no doubt. Maybe it's looking more into next year when it becomes Audi, but it's good news for Gabriel Bortoleto that he's waiting down at the end of the pit lane. Maybe there's a chance for him to get a decent job done in qualifying here.
It's always difficult for a rookie, because it's the same with Ollie Behrman, really, if we count him as a rookie, that he's coming into a team that's really struggling, because it just means that you're fighting all the way through the weekend. You're fighting problems with the car. You're struggling to get the car anywhere near to your liking. And at the same time, you need to be able to impress. You need the world to look on and start talking about you in a positive light. The first job you need to do as any rookie or as any new driver in a team is to be favourable in comparison to your teammate. When you're up against an established driver like Nico Hülkenberg, it's a really good benchmark for these young drivers, and as you say, I think Bortoleto is doing a pretty solid job so far.
Now, if you're listening to us on Sports Extra, we are going to continue with qualifying, which has been quite seriously delayed here today with a couple of incidents. For those of you listening on Radio 5 Live, get ready to head over to the excitement, to the build-up to the FA Cup final with Mark Chapman. So we're still on with Sports Extra, and we are now just seeing this Q2 session getting underway. Max Verstappen's one of the early ones out in this session as well, and this is going to give us a whole new line. We know that Max was very quick in Q1. He did a beautiful lap when he had to. Others were making little errors, little mistakes. Now we're going to get a slightly clearer view. And without the 20 cars all competing on track, it does become a little easier to get together a couple of decent laps.
Yes, just a little bit. We now know that Ollie Behrman will not take part in Q2. He's out of his car walking down the pit lane. There's been no official word from race control. The last message we got was that his lap time was under review, but he certainly won't be taking part in this section of qualifying. So he's out. We've now got 15 cars making their way onto the circuit, and as you rightly say, Ben, the traffic situation just alleviated just a tiny bit. Still 15 cars is enough to cause problems if you get it wrong. They've all got to find the right gaps on the circuit, and they all want to get out with just 13 and a half minutes in this session now to get a good couple of runs in to establish themselves firmly inside the top 10, which is what they need to do to get through to the final part of qualifying.
And the sun is still shining here at Imola. There was a bit of rain in the background a while ago, but that seems to have disappeared. The fans are loving sitting in some fantastic viewing spots. They get some great areas around this Imola circuit to look down on the cars as they go up and down, because you do get this elevation change here at Imola. It is one of the great places to watch Formula One cars, I have to say. But the drivers now are going to have to define it and get absolutely everything right, as we see Max Verstappen beginning to pick up pace as he's done his outlap, and he's now going to go on to his opening fast lap in Q2. The man who's taken 43 career pole positions. This is the 400th Grand Prix for Red Bull this weekend. Is he going to be able to take another pole position for the team and match what Sebastian Vettel has done in the past with a number of pole positions for the team? We're going to find out not until we get into Q3, but let's keep an eye on him and see how he's doing in this one.
Yeah, really good first part of the lap. He's gone through the first sector, nice and quick through there, navigates all of the traffic. He's the man that's looked most comfortable in this qualifying session. Q1 was really quite successful for him after some difficult practice sessions over the course of Friday and then Saturday morning. But when it matters, as is often the case, Max Verstappen is able to turn it on and deliver. And here he is now on another flying lap, the first of this Q2 session for Verstappen and any of the top drivers. He's gone quickly through the first sector. He's gone quickly through the second sector as well, navigating the chicanes towards the end of the lap. There's a little bit of traffic in front of him, but he's nice and tidy and under control so far.
He is, but I have to tell you, Charles Leclerc has actually got a fraction quicker than him in the first sector. Not much different, but Verstappen's now just done a very good second sector. But Leclerc, we will be keeping an eye on in the Ferrari, because that first sector has worked well. So let's see what Verstappen's time is like. He did that 1:15.1 earlier on. Let's see as he goes across the line. It's a 1:15.4. Now we're on board with Charles Leclerc. Not as rapid in the second sector, sector. He's missed out just a tiny bit on Verstappen there, but let's see how the final sector goes.
Yeah, he crashed it across the curbs again, which really unsettled the car, and a few bites at the steering wheel to get it back under control. So that middle part of the lap will have certainly cost him some time. He's around about a tenth and a half off what Verstappen's done so far as he heads towards the line, and he is second place on the lineup so far, just around 2/10 as it was when it finished the lap.
But Fernando Alonso has done a good job. Hamilton is currently third fastest, Alonso fourth fastest, Stroll fifth fastest. They are using the soft tyres once again. And now Isaac Hadjar has done a good job too. He's moved up into fourth position. Bortoleto, who was the first to set the lap time, he's come back into the pits, and he is being pushed down by pretty much everybody else. So it does look as though the Sauber is still likely to be the slowest, or certainly one of the slowest of the cars here.
Yeah, Lando Norris is on a fast lap now. He's managed the first sector of the lap pretty carefully to keep those tyres alive, but the middle sector was very quick. The third sector is also very quick, and we're going to see Lando Norris come towards the line. Russell drops in behind Verstappen, but Lando Norris, as he comes up towards the timing line, he goes fastest of anybody so far.
Yeah, let's see how this goes for Lando Norris. So Max Verstappen currently fastest from Russell, but no, it is Lando Norris. Lando Norris who goes quicker, but Oscar Piastri's on a lap as well at this point. So let's see whether Piastri can match or beat his teammate. The rivalry between these two McLaren teammates is going to be huge throughout the season, as we know, and he's gone faster in the middle sector.
Yeah, it's looking good. He actually went quicker in the first sector as well. The middle sector's been good too, and the final sector's also so far shaping up to be quick. This is going to be, if he keeps it on this trajectory, the fastest lap of anybody so far. This is looking like McLaren's resuming normal service, although there's still time to go, and it is Piastri who drops in ahead of his teammates, faster than Lando Norris and faster than Max Verstappen.
It's a good lap off 1:15.2. It's only by 0.020 of a second over Lando Norris, but that's the sort of closeness we expect now. Riding on board with Carlos Sainz, he's having to do quite a lot of correction with the Williams there. That cost him a little bit of time. He's still doing a reasonable lap right now. We'll see how this all goes. He is currently not set a time. His teammate Alex Albon, 12th fastest in the other Williams. They've both been very even with each other. Gasly is only just outside the top 10 at the moment in the Alpine. Sainz does go 9th. That actually pushes Gasly down to 12th now. So Carlos Sainz in the Williams has gone 9th. He's just ahead of Kimi Antonelli, who's in 10th place. But still, we've got Fernando Alonso in that top 10, which is something we haven't seen this year, and that's impressive. Just looking at a replay of what happened to Alex Albon here. Oh, he got very sideways, Mark.
Massively sideways, yeah. That was proper drifting there. Huge handfuls of opposite lock as he came out the chicane, dipping the rear wheel over the edge of the curb and into the gravel. That cost him a huge amount of time. You're absolutely right. You know, Alonso having a really great weekend. It didn't start that well on Friday practice sessions, and even Lance Stroll saying the car with these new upgrades didn't even feel very different to the way it was last time out. But maybe a little bit of fine-tuning and a little bit of understanding as to exactly how they're working and how to get the best out of them. They're certainly looking a lot better when it comes to today, and Alonso, yeah, currently in P8, which is great stuff.
Interestingly though, we're not down to the pace we saw in FP3 earlier today when Norris did a 1:14.8. We're still in the 1:15s at the moment, so you'd think there would be a little bit more to come. I know that the temperatures are slightly different, but not hugely different.
No. Yeah, I think there's more to come. I think certainly from Verstappen's point of view, he's around a tenth and a half off the current lead, which is Piastri right now. I still think this is going to be mighty close when it really comes down to Q3. This is the point, of course, in Q2 where, although you can't really notice it from the outside, they're not laying everything on the line. It feels like it, but they're not pushing to the absolute limits, because you do instinctively just hold the tiniest amount back. You can't take the same risks in Q2 or Q1 as you can in Q3, because it's all or nothing at that point, isn't it? You've got to lay it all on the line to get your final grid position. There are no more sessions after that, so you can afford to take a little bit more, an element of risk. So I suspect these lap times will drop a little bit more when you get into the final part of qualifying very shortly.
Gasly at the moment is outside the top 10. He's down in 12th place. We saw Kimi Antonelli a moment ago. He's some 5/10 slower than George Russell at the moment. He's just struggling to get that flying lap in at his home track. Of course, it would be lovely for the 18-year-old Kimi Antonelli to put a good lap together in both this session and particularly get into the top 10. He is just in the top 10, but he's at risk at the moment because Lance Stroll is only a fraction slower than him in 11th place. Gasly in 12th. Also in the drop zone, Albon, who I think has the pace to get into the top 10, but he made that mistake that we saw a few moments ago. Bortoletto is 14th. Of course, Colapinto, who didn't make it into Q2, but of course couldn't because he crashed out in Q1. So there's no change in that position. We're just watching Pierre Gasly. You're listening in on the onboard with Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. He used the curve quite a lot through the outer chicane, but actually it didn't cost him as much there as we sometimes see. Then coming into the final double left-hander at Rivazza. First part pretty good. Second part, did he run wide? Yeah, it actually looked good.
Aston Martin. What's the name of that smart guy in the Aston? I remember him.
He's talking about the Aston Martin. I suspect it was Stroll, was it? But the Aston Martin didn't really get in his way in terms of physically in his way. But I think in all honesty, Gasly was untidy before he even approached the Aston Martin. The first chicane, he got a little bit untidy, as you said. He bounced over the curb a little bit. It just put him offline a little bit. And I think later on, as he came through that last couple of corners, the left-handers, it was probably the aerodynamic effect coming off the back of the Aston Martin that just cost him a little bit of downforce. We talk about such tiny margins making the difference here, and I think that's a bit of frustration, perhaps a little bit of frustration in himself that he might be taking out on somebody else.
We're about to see it get busy again. We're just under 5 minutes to go in Q2 to determine the top 10 that will be making it through into the final part of qualifying and the battle for pole position. And we are seeing a whole fresh set of soft tyres on the cars being heated up, waiting for those heat areas to come off the tyres and send them down the pit lane. It looks like, as ever, there's hardly anyone out there at the moment. They're all going to go out at exactly the same time. I often wonder why not just go out, get a clear run.
Well, they're looking for the sort of optimum time on circuit, which is typically the last moment.
Here we go.
But you're absolutely right. Everyone piles out at exactly the same time, and then they've got to figure out their way of finding gaps onto the circuit, and that's the tricky part here. So the two McLarens right at the back of this queue, although they're both safe, there's no doubt they're going to make it through into Q1. They're probably just using this final lap as more of a learning thing than an actual necessary lap.
So, interestingly, used tyres on Max Verstappen's car, at least they look that way, although they're coming up as new on the timing screens for some reason. But more importantly, medium tyres on both Aston Martins.
Yeah.
Now, that's force of circumstance because they've used up too many soft tyres now, so that if they get into Q3, they wouldn't have a new set of softs if they didn't run the mediums now. But it just goes to show, like in Q1, I think Aston Martin probably think that the medium is just about as quick as the soft, and then so they might as well put a new medium on the car, and it has the effect also of scrubbing it for the race. Put a new medium on the car, they're not really going to lose out on pace, and then if they get into Q3, jobs are good because they've got a new set of softs anyway.
That's really interesting, and I'm going to be fascinated to see what kind of lap times the Aston Martins do now on the medium compounds in comparison to the others on the soft.
Well, it will be interesting, but as I said earlier on, I think even Pirelli revised their own projections of the delta time between the two tyres off the back of what we saw this morning. They put that down to 0, so they've even predicted there's nothing between the two of them. So you're absolutely right. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, and I think a little bit of interesting information ahead of tomorrow's race.
Yeah.
The truth is they're burning through tyres. These are going to be race tyres as well, these medium tyres for tomorrow. However, we fully expect it, as we said earlier on, to be a one-stop race, which would mean you do one stint on a medium, one stint on a hard. So actually the limitation, because it's not a two-stopper, or highly unlikely to be a two-stopper, not quite what it might normally be.
Also worth saying that this may be a new set of tyres of mediums, so it's the second of 2 new sets of mediums. So they used one set in the first session, but Alonso didn't do a flying lap on them, remember, because of the red flag, whereas Stroll did. So he's effectively got brand new tyres, more or less, for the start of the race.
Okay. Interestingly also that Isaac Hadjar car, currently in 7th place. He's the fastest of the rookies, and remember, this year so far he's made it through out of Q1 every time. He's done it again this time, and he's in a good position to get into Q3 today, which he has been in before already this season. We're listening on board with Kimi Antonelli at this stage in the Mercedes, and we're going to do a little comparison as he comes through the initial chicanes and down towards the left-hander at Tosa. He is 0.1 of a second slower than Piastri in that first sector, but this is definitely the sort of lap he needs to improve on where he is, because he's currently 10th in the standings. He needs to move up a bit from there.
Yeah, he does. There will be some pressure. There's always pressure on young Formula One drivers, but this is a home hero here who's brought up just down the road. He's still doing his schooling in between F1 Grand Prix weekends at 18 years old. It's incredible what he's been able to achieve so far. I think he's having a good start, a good solid start to his Formula One career, but he will want to excel here. The first couple of sectors have been decent. It's an improvement from him. He's not going to trouble the McLarens or Verstappen in the Red Bull up front, but I think he's looking like he's going to improve.
So at the moment it is Piastri, Norris, Verstappen top 3, no great surprise, and everybody else now trying to improve. Well, Antonelli's improved a bit. He's gone 8th fastest. Is that going to be enough to get into the top 10 once everybody else has improved? Hamilton 7th fastest. That wasn't a great lap. Charles Leclerc is on a slight improving lap here, currently 6th fastest, and yeah, he's still 6th fastest. The final sector wasn't great. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz has done a very good first sector, and we are watching on board now with Carlos, and second sector pretty good, so he's in good shape here. Currently 10th, could move up the top 10.
Do you know what? This is a very, very good lap from Carlos Sainz. He's in the final sector of the lap now. He's had a good first sector. The second sector was good too, and actually he's continuing through the final sector. He's got 2 more corners really to go through the left-handers, keeps it just inside the racetrack, and he's now flat out to the line, and he goes quicker than anybody else. That's a great lap from a Williams.
That is superb by Carlos Sainz, and there's a big round of applause in the Williams garage for that. Alex Albon is just coming over the line as well. He goes 7th. There's a gap of 0.3 of a second. So Carlos Sainz really seems to be getting to grips with the Williams now. It took him a little while to feel at home with it, but he's very comfortable with it here at Imola. Now we're on board with Pierre Gasly as he comes into the final section of the track, currently down in 14th place. Can Pierre Gasly get himself into that top 10? He's been in the top 10 yes, he's moved up into 6th place. Always seems to go well at this track. Will that be enough? Well, we've got the checker flag out now, so it's all about who's on a quick lap right now. Let's see what Aston Martin can do, because they're both out, but Stroll's gone 6th and Alonso behind on the medium compound tyre. Lance Stroll has gone 6th. Here comes Alonso, he's gone 6th. They're 6th and 7th on medium tyre, and for the first time this year Aston Martin have got in the top 10. That's amazing. But Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton have failed. Both Ferraris are out. They will not be getting into the next part of qualifying, and there is a shake of the head from Lewis Hamilton. He's heard the story. Leclerc 11th, Hamilton 12th.
Sorry guys, got improved for some reason.
Well, there's not a huge difference between him and Leclerc. The car's not working here. Antonelli's not made it. Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. Bortoletto, not so surprising, in the Sauber's not made it. And of course Colapinto, who crashed out in Q1, down in 15th place. But that is a bit of a shocker, Mark. We have lost both Ferraris from the final part of qualifying.
Both Ferraris and 1 Mercedes. I don't think we'd have expected that to happen. Ferrari haven't been under control. They haven't been happy this weekend. Here's Leclerc.
My God, my God, my God, my God.
And it's Aston Martin, in a way, that has done this, because they've got both Astons in the top 10.
Yeah, very true. I mean, and the 2 Ferraris had brand new sets of soft tyres on the car for that last run. The 2 Aston Martins were on brand new sets of the medium tyre and delivered a really much quicker lap time, just showing that there's not too much performance difference between the tyres, but the performance difference between the teams right now is staggering. I'm really quite surprised with the drop-off there from Ferrari. We knew they weren't happy, we knew they weren't comfortable, but to not make it through. You can look at the likes of the 2 Aston Martins. You've got Isaac Hadjar as well, Pierre Gasly, all making it through ahead of those 2. Kimi Antonelli will also be very disappointed because his teammate George Russell up in P4, that car has got the pace in it. Kimi just not able to find that this afternoon.
Yeah, I do feel for Kimi. He's got a lot of friends and family here this weekend. Of course, the Italian on home turf, but it hasn't really quite worked out for him. But he is a rookie. He is learning, and we've seen some amazing talent when he took that sprint pole last time out in Miami. But yeah, there's a big shake of the head from Charles Leclerc. The disappointment for Ferrari, but a big part of that is what Aston Martin have managed to do this time, because Aston have struggled so much this year, but suddenly the changes they've made to the car, and maybe the choice of tyres as well, has worked extremely well. Also going into the top 10, perhaps a bit surprisingly, Pierre Gasly, although he has done that this year. Isaac Hadjar for Racing Bulls has done another great job, and we've got both Williams, and remember, it was Carlos Sainz who set the outright fastest time. That's remarkable, isn't it, Andrew?
It is, but both McLarens were on used tyres, and Verstappen didn't finish his lap, so that would put Sainz around 4th, and that's only one place higher than he qualified in Miami last weekend, if I remember, or last time out, if I remember rightly. He was certainly 5th or 6th, around about that sort of level. So Williams have been having a very good season, so there's a little bit of a skew in the times because of the tyre choices. What are Aston Martin going to do with their tyres in this final second now?
Right.
Interesting, because they've not got any new mediums left, so they have got one new set of softs, so I suspect they'll just wait and go for one run, maybe, but let's see. But
even if they ended up 9th and 10th, they'd be happy compared to what's been going on in a way.
I'm not sure they would anymore.
I feel like they're not going to be happy with that now.
Right, expectations change so quickly in Formula 1, don't they, Mark? And if you go 6th and 7th in Q2, you're going to be thinking, right, we want 6th and 7th on the grid as well, at least. So
I think they've got to use the soft tyre here, because what we do know is that soft tyre is very unlikely to be a race tyre when it comes to tomorrow. Although the lap time seems not much different to the medium, I think the sort of amount of laps that it would be able to do, particularly with a car full of fuel, I think would be considerably less than what the medium will. So they've got to use, I think Andrew's right, I think they're going to probably hang back, wait for a gap in the traffic, go for one flying lap on the soft tyres, hope they can deliver something, but it feels like that car is a little bit more alive on the medium tyre. For them, at least, it seems to be working better, but I think they're going to have their hands slightly forced in that it'll have to be a soft tyre run. They should still be able to get something pretty decent out of this, though.
Williams, the other one that's the real surprise in a way, though, as you say, they may not be necessarily battling for pole, but still very, very good job by Carlos Sainz, and the Williams team have been making these good steps up the ladder so far this year. So we've got plenty to look forward to, and of course Fernando Alonso, who has tremendous history at Imola in the past. It's rather lovely that he has managed to make it into the top 10. He qualified second here in 2005, went on to take their victory that year.
So there's an interesting little development here at Ferrari. Now, in Miami, Fred Vasseur, the team principal, was bemoaning the fact that they weren't able to improve on new tyres in the second part of on their second runs in qualifying. They went faster on the used tyres, whereas everyone else improved, as you would expect on the new. And exactly the same thing has happened here in Imola. They were on used tyres for the first run in Q2. They set their fastest times on those. They've gone out on the new tyres, and neither Leclerc or Hamilton improved on the new tyre. So I guess it's another illustration of just how lost Ferrari seem to be at the moment with this car, which hasn't made the step forward that they expected it would make. It's nowhere near the step forward that McLaren, who were their main rivals at the end of the season, here's what's happened.
What is this hook? McLaren.
I don't know what he really means by what is this on the McLaren, but what he's describing there is he was going past the McLaren on the run from the Variante Alta towards Ravazza, so maybe he was complaining about being held up but didn't quite get his language right. But anyway, it's just his Gasly again.
Let's go. That was a good lap. Let's go! That was a good lap. That's good. A very good job.
Pierre Gasly pleased with himself.
Same again.
So yeah, they've got into the top 10 Alpine with one car in the wall with Franco Colapinto. So it just underlines the trouble that Ferrari are in at the moment, that they can't work out how to operate that car in a way that most Formula 1 cars would work.
Absolutely. No, well, it's going to be fascinating to see how these cars go in the final part of qualifying. Let me just remind you of the 10 that will be doing this final part. It will be Carlos Sainz, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, George Russell, Max Verstappen, of course, still very much a part of it, the two Astons of Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. Pierre Gasly, as we heard, very happy to be in the top 10. Isaac Hadjar, who's done another excellent job as top rookie, and Alex Albon, who has also made this top 10. And we're just looking at the Williams out there of Carlos Sainz, who set that great pace early. It was bouncing around a bit, but he dealt with it very well.
Yeah, and just a quick update from Alpine. Franco Colapinto went to the medical centre as is required for precautionary checks, but he's been checked and cleared to leave.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. It's good to know he's okay. And it was Yuki Tsunoda, of course, who had a very nasty accident earlier, but it certainly seemed okay, being fully checked as well. Max Verstappen looking for his third consecutive pole position here at Imola over these last 3 years, but also he'll be looking for another victory. He has been the dominant force here, and qualifying on pole position can make all the difference at Imola, because if you can then control the pace throughout the race, it's very difficult for other people to overtake. Right, we are about to see the cars heading down the pit lane. They are coming out of the garages now as we get ready for the final part of qualifying to get underway. And Mark, this is going to be interesting. I mean, we still expect McLaren and Verstappen to be kind of battling up front, but there are some other options, some other drivers that are putting in some surprise performances.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm looking forward to this. This is when it matters, and this is often when we've seen some of the tiny mistakes, and they sometimes are the tiniest mistakes, have a really significant impact in where you sit on the grid. So close is the performance of a number of these front runners. This is going to be pressure on people like Lando Norris. We've seen him make some errors in moments like this that have allowed his teammate to get in front at various times over the course of this year and last. Lando will want to deliver today. He cannot let his teammate build too much of a lead, both in terms of the championship, but also just in terms of status within their own garage. He's got to deliver right now.
And let's bear in mind, Ben, before we get into our expectations and expecting McLaren to be on pole, Max Verstappen has taken 3 poles in 6 races this year and 3 of the past 4. So in some ways you could argue that he's the favourite for the pole, even though McLaren are dominating the championship.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's so important at a track like this. And, of course, when we go to Monaco next as well, because qualifying is a big part of Monaco, even if they have introduced a new rule of 2 pit stops to take place during that race, but still qualifying will be crucial. We're just listening on board with Fernando Alonso right now, and he must be feeling nicely buzzed up. He's on the soft tyre now, so they used the medium to get both cars into the top 10, but he is on the soft tyres, as Andrew mentioned, was more likely.
Yeah, I think they didn't have a huge amount of choice in that, but interesting that they've come out along with everybody else. They have joined the track along with everybody with 9.5 minutes on the clock at the moment. They'll all be looking to find a gap. Alonso won't have another set of tyres, so he'll go to get a good run in here, but he does give himself the option that if there's some kind of problem, if there's a yellow flag, if he makes some kind of mistake, cooling things down and going again is his final chance to secure a decent grid spot in this last 9 or so minutes of Q1. But I cannot wait. I think the unpredictability of this, not knowing who it's going to be, is it going to be Verstappen, who looked very comfortable in the early part of qualifying? Is it going to be the McLarens, who you can never ever count out? And if it is going to be a McLaren, which one of them two is it?
Interestingly, as we're getting underway now already, Lando Norris onto a quick lap. Lance Stroll has just already done a slightly better first sector than his teammate Fernando Alonso on their initial lap. We shall see how this develops, but this is an important one that we're watching right now, Lando Norris, because we know that he has the pace here. He's been quick all weekend, battling with his teammate by thousandths of a second to try and set the pace. He has set the initial first sector time. Let's see whether Oscar Piastri is going to be able to match that himself. We're riding on board with Lando Norris as he climbs up the hill and now into the left-hander at Pilatella, and then back down the hill. Piastri has gone a fraction faster in first sector.
Yeah, so it was a good sector from Lando, good first sector from Lando, but Piastri has just pipped that, so he's gone even faster. And this is so often the case when the pressure's on, when the situation really counts, and I'm talking about qualifying, it's often Piastri. It has been so far this year on many occasions, and he's able to deliver that in races as well, that he's had the upper upper hand. But here comes Verstappen. Never count him out. He's gone 3/10 quicker in that first sector alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, his first sector is certainly quicker than earlier, but it's about a tenth quicker than the McLarens are actually doing on this particular lap. Let's just see then. Lando Norris goes fastest for now, a 1:14.962. We're back into the 1 minute 14s, which we saw earlier on today. You're now listening to Oscar Piastri as he comes out of the last corner. He's fastest in the middle sector. Is he going to go ahead of his teammate? Yes, he is, by just over a tenth of a second. But behind them, Max Verstappen, not a brilliant middle sector. He's done a very good first sector. Is he going to snatch that spot away from the two McLarens? We've seen him do this so many times, but can he hold on? Over the line goes Max Verstappen. Yes, he does, by 0.049.
We said it was going to be close, and that is mighty close. There are still 7 minutes to go. You will get another opportunity, but there is a limitation on tyres up and down the pit lane right now. But that is first blood to Max Verstappen. It's a good lap.
A very good lap. And Russell goes fourth, so it's Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, Russell in fourth place. At the moment, Isaac Hadjar is in fifth. We're now watching the Williams, though, which have done a very good job so far. Neither of them has set time. They're both on quick laps at this point. Certainly not challenging for the fastest lap that Max Verstappen has just done. So Carlos is not going to repeat quite by being top of the list as he was in Q2. But let's just have a look. Alex Albon goes 8th fastest, slower than both Aston Martins, actually. Stroll is currently 6th. Alonso is 7th. Albon has gone 8th. And Sainz, he goes 8th now, ahead of his teammate, but again, behind the two Aston Martins. So there is no doubt Aston Martin have made an impressive improvement in the car. It's working well. They're currently 6th and 7th.
So, tyre strategy, Ben. The Williamses are on used tyres, which probably explains why they're behind the Aston Martins at the moment, whereas the Astons were on new tyres. Stroll, as you say, beat Alonso on that new tyre run, which is perhaps a surprise. And Isaac Hadjar also on used tyres in the Racing Bull. So, very impressive performance from him in 5th place.
Yeah, that is very impressive, as you say, and we shall see how this all goes because this has been a very, very interesting time. This year, actually, Alonso has out-qualified Stroll in all of the Grand Prix, although Stroll's the one who has scored points, and Alonso hasn't scored any points so far this year. There have been some DNFs that have affected him as well, and then he's finished just outside the points a couple of times. But right now, as you say, Stroll is a bit quicker than Alonso. They are 6th and 7th, but it's Verstappen who is potentially on pole yet again here at Imola. We're just watching an onboard of Russell as he came through and up the hill, coming out of Acqua Minerali. Was a little bit wide.
It was a big snap of oversteer just as he came back out of the dip at the bottom of that hill over the curve. I think maybe the car bottomed over the curve. He got a big old handful of opposite lock, so it will have cost him time. He's in 4th place, which is, you know, what we're getting used to seeing George Russell now. He's always there or thereabouts, isn't he? Never too far away in a car that I think most people accept is not actually on a level of the two McLarens and even the Red Bull of Max Verstappen at times, but you can never count him out. He's delivering consistent results, consistent performances, and keeping himself in touch in this championship.
Yeah, definitely. He is doing a good job in that point of view. Max Verstappen with that 1:14.772, that is fastest at the moment by 0.049 of a second, which is a very similar sort of gap that we've seen a number of times this year. That is how close the championship battle is between Red Bull and McLaren in particular. The Mercedes not far behind with George Russell in 4th place, and Isaac Hadjar then, it is a bit of a gap from 4th to 5th. Hadjar currently in 5th place, but as Andrew was telling us, some of the tyre uses further down, not everybody's had fresh tyres, so there is a bit more of a gap there. But Hadjar, I have to say, he's doing a very impressive rookie job for the Racing Bulls team, isn't he?
Really, really good, yeah. Cannot fault him. We said yesterday that he had a very difficult opener to his Grand Prix career, didn't he? In that moment on the Australian Grand Prix where he crashed on his way to the grid, but the bounce back from that has been mighty impressive. The resilience he's shown, the maturity he's shown, and he's now delivering consistent results. Today is a really, really good example of that.
It's been a good track for him. He won in Formula 2 here last year from qualifying 3rd. Well, he was 3rd on the grid, and he won that second race at in Formula 2 here last year, Isaac Hadjar, the 20-year-old Frenchman, who is doing a great job for Racing Bulls as a top rookie at the moment in the series, certainly today, in terms of qualifying. Now, the cars are heading back out. We've got just over 3 minutes to go, and it looks like we're going to get the whole group out at once, but with 10 cars now as it is, there is the space for them all to find some room and get in one flying fast lap to be able to enjoy this right the way through to the end.
New tyres on both McLarens, new tyres on the Red Bull of Max Verstappen as well. This is going to be the fastest we can possibly achieve out of any of these cars. The track itself should now be at its fastest. The drivers are dialed into this racetrack. Fresh, soft tyres on most of the front runners. This is where it really matters. This is the most exciting part of qualifying for all of us watching. We have no idea which way it's going to go. Half a tenth of a second is all that currently splits the lead driver of Max Verstappen and the second place guy, Oscar Piastri, as things stand.
Right, so let's see what happens here. Max Verstappen is still in the pit lane at the moment. We're just waiting for him to come out. The man who took the pole position the last two events here last year, and then of course 2022 there wasn't a race here in 2023 when it had to be cancelled through the flooding in this area, which was really tragic time, and there was no Grand Prix in 2023. But the last two races that have been held here have been taken pole by Verstappen, but he's won the last 3 races to be held here. So is he going to hold on to that pole position? Are McLaren, as you say, going to be able to battle through? Listen to Sainz. Bit frustrated going out the pits?
He's frustrated because there's 1 minute 30 on the clock. A lap time, as we know, is around about 1 minute 15. That's a flat out lap time. He's got to find his way round and create the gap to make sure he's got enough time to cross the line before the checkered flag comes out. And at the back of the queue, which is where he is, that's going to be tricky as others start to position themselves, not taking their time, not rushing their way around, because they want their own gaps. The last man in that queue, which looks like Carlos Sainz, is the man that's going to be at the behest of everyone else's strategy here.
We're watching Oscar Piastri, who's looking for his 3rd pole position of the year, and he's done a good first sector. Not quite as rapid as Verstappen, but very much on the game through sector 1. Can he keep it going through sector 2?
Yeah, well, sector 1 was where Verstappen was strongest of anybody, has been all day, but sector 2 the McLarens have been quicker, and that's how it looks now. Piastri goes to the middle sector faster than anybody so far. If he continues this, and his 3rd sector has also been very strong today. At the moment he's on for the quickest lap time so far, with Verstappen and Norris still to follow. He's coming into the final few corners now. If he can hold it together, this will be provisional pole position.
I hope he can hold it together with some slower cars up ahead of him, and he gets a clearer run. It's tricky because quite a few cars are getting out of his way. They're just getting out of the way. They've still got to get across the line before the flag comes out. Let's see what this is for Piastri then as he comes up. He's done it, he's gone faster. Provisional pole for Oscar Piastri, but let's wait and see. Lando Norris is also on a good lap. Can McLaren take pole position here? It would be the first pole position for McLaren at Imola since Kimi Raikkonen in 2005.
And Max Verstappen's also gone quickly in that first sector. We said that was his favourite sector. That's where the Red Bull comes alive, and he's maximised it again, quicker than anybody in the first part of the lap. Lando Norris is 0.3 of a second down. He's crashed over the curve, and Lando Norris is not going to improve on this lap. Certainly not enough to trouble his teammate, but Max Verstappen could.
Yeah, Max Verstappen could. And of course Piastri definitely got a bit caught up by traffic in the last section. Norris has got a clear part, but he has clipped that curve, as you said, and Verstappen's not done a particularly good middle sector. So let's have a look. Norris is about to come over the line. He goes over it, no change. He stays in 3rd place. Verstappen is now the one to push. He's got the 2 left-handers to finish off the lap and then full throttle on exit. Can he gain a little bit more? A 1:14.670, the time to beat of Oscar Piastri. Over the line, he can't do it. Piastri has taken pole position at Imola. Oscar Piastri done a fantastic job. Verstappen 2nd, Norris 3rd. Let's see where Carlos Sainz goes. He can move up from 10th place, yes, up to 6th position. But Fernando Alonso is already 5th on the medium compound tyre. Russell goes 3rd. Oh, that's tough for Norris. Norris has been pushed down to fourth. So his teammate Piastri for McLaren is on pole, and he has taken his third pole of this year. It's the first Australian driver to ever take pole here at Imola. Well done to Oscar Piastri. Verstappen will be with him on the front row. The gap just 0.034 of a second. Russell third ahead of Norris. That's going to hurt Lando. Fernando Alonso an excellent fifth. Carlos Sainz in sixth. Alex Albon in seventh. Lance Stroll eighth. Isaac Hadjar ninth. And Pierre Gasly in 10th.
You are pole position. Great job, buddy.
Oh, I was going to lose my if that last corner cost me pole. Well done, everybody. It was not the easiest session, but nicely done.
He's so calm, isn't he, on the radio? And he's right about that last sector, because there were cars in his way and he didn't get the perfect run because he couldn't quite get the view through the corner, but there were so many cars in his way.
Yeah, really tricky last part of the lap, but he nailed the first part of the lap so well, and everyone else, actually, to be fair to them, did a very good job of getting out of his way. But it's so easy to get distracted in that scenario, but he didn't. He nailed it once again, calm under pressure, and he's delivered when it matters, which seems to be the calling card of Oscar Piastri. He's doing such a good job this year.
McLaren have done well here at Imola in the past, although it's taken a good number of years. As I said, it was Kimi Raikkonen 20 years ago who had pole for McLaren here, but it is their 10th ever pole at Imola, so it's great news for them. And for the team, it's their fourth pole of this season. Max, of course, has had 3 poles himself, but beaten here for once at Imola. He's looking to still try and take the race victory, of course, and back up the wins he's had the last 3 times here. But he will be starting on the front row, and there'll be a massive battle between him and Piastri down to the first corner.
Yeah, as we're starting to get used to this season, aren't we? Those two going into turn 1 has become the story of 2025, and I'm intrigued to see how that plays out tomorrow, because as we keep talking about, whoever gets through that first corner, whoever gets through the first lap in the lead of this race, stands a very, very good chance of controlling it and coming away with a great result.
Absolutely. And also very, very well done to George Russell to have snatched that third place from Lando Norris. George has been consistent. He hasn't been able to take a pole position. He has had a front row this year with one good qualifying session in second place, but he's consistently up there in that top group, and I am impressed that he managed to go third. Lando Norris will be bitterly disappointed that he's down in fourth.
It's going to really hurt him, not just because he's fourth on the grid, but because his teammate has taken pole position again. The difference between the two of them once again becoming the storyline of this weekend. And for Lando Norris, we know how hard he takes those things. It's going to really start to get to him, if it isn't already, the confidence that he needs to start building to retain an element of control in this championship is just gradually ebbing and slipping away. In fact, we're just seeing actually a replay there which could explain some of what we see with Lando Norris. As he came through the middle part of the lap, Isaac Hadjar had gone off into the gravel, kicked up dust, and Lando had to come through a very, very difficult and unsighted section of the racetrack. I don't think it cost him too much, but it certainly wasn't ideal.
No, and he definitely hit the curb a little bit too hard at Variante Alta, the first curb. It didn't send him off into the gravel, but it just wasn't ideal for him, and therefore it wasn't perfect for Lando Norris. And the man who's had that one pole position at the beginning of the year, the first round in Australia, but he hasn't had one since. And for Oscar Piastri to take yet another pole position, a third pole for himself this year, that's impressive. And last year he did out-qualify Norris, but then had a penalty for impeding somebody, but that didn't happen. So let's hear from Davide Valsecchi, who is going to interview our top 3 drivers.
Oscar Piastri on pole position, congratulations, man. Was a mega lap. How was your lap? How was your car? You were the first one for in the second try, and seems that it pays off. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great session, very tough session with all the delays, red flags, and also the tyres. The tyres have been very, very tricky today. I think after yesterday, everyone thought the C6 was not too bad, and then today it was, real mystery. So the team did a great job, got the car in a nice window. We've been trying a few different things this weekend, and we got into a nice place for qualifying. So the lap was good. I had about 4 cars in the last corner, which didn't help, but it was enough. So very, very happy with the job I've done, and yeah, excited for tomorrow now.
And can you tell us why this strategy to be the first in the track for the last try? You were confident to be fast enough to get the pole?
Yes, I mean, I wasn't thrilled to be the first car on track, but I had quite a big gap in the run before anyway, so it wasn't actually that much different for me. And yeah, of course, you lose the slipstream going first, but you don't have any disturbed air, you don't have any dirty air. So I think that definitely helped me out a little bit, but yeah, that's what we chose to do. I think we've got enough pace to be able to do that and stick to our guns, and that's what we did. So the team did a great job of executing that one.
Congratulations, well done, pole position. Thank you. Max Verstappen, second position. What a qualify. Mega first sector, and then talk us through your lap, please.
Yeah, I think everything was going really well. Yeah, this softest compound is very difficult to keep them alive around the lap. So yeah, sector 1 was good, and then the tires again fell away from me. From there onwards, like tiny margins. But I mean, it was cool. But then you could see George. He set his lap on a medium. So yeah, maybe they were a bit too soft for this track, and for us at least, it was a bit more difficult to extract the most out of it. I felt a bit happier on the medium. But the race is tomorrow. That's where you score the points, of course. So that's what we have to focus on. But I do think that today was a very good day for us.
Yeah, it seems that your teammate had the crash at the beginning, but with your Red Bull today, it seems that you were flying. So we have some hope for another big fight again tomorrow against the McLaren duo.
Let's see. I mean, last race was not really a fight, you know. So I hope that we just pick up a bit of pace, have a bit more of a stable car, and then hopefully we can look after our tires a bit better.
Congratulations. Well done. George, congratulations. Third position. You surprised everyone with the brave choice to put medium compound just in the last try. How was your car? How was your feeling? Why that decision?
Yeah, we were going for it. We thought maybe the medium tyre would be a fast one, and it turned out to be a good choice. So, of course, a small compromise now for tomorrow, but it was worth it to be back in the top 3. Really happy with the performance, very close to Oscar, which again is always a surprise when you're so close to the McLaren because they're so good at the moment. But it was a good afternoon.
And to be honest, everyone was waiting for your lap time. You were the last on the line. With that choice, probably you made the difference in the last sector, and that gave you the chance to be up there.
I mean, it was very challenging because opening the lap, we almost missed the flag. So I was in first gear, started my lap. I lost 1/10 down the straight because I was so close to Sainz. But, nevertheless, really happy with P3. I think we could not have really achieved much more today. But ultimately, we need to focus on tomorrow and try and get back on the podium.
Congratulations. Another very fast performance.
Thank you so much. Ciao.
Well, that was impressive indeed. Oscar Piastri taking pole from Max Verstappen, George Russell an excellent third, Lando Norris down in fourth ahead of Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, Lance Stroll, Isaac Hadjar and Pierre Gasly. Interesting hearing from George that those medium tyres did work well for him.
Yeah, that's right. It's been a little bit of an anomaly this weekend. All the talk ahead of the weekend was that Pirelli bringing the softest tyre in their range. It was thought it was going to be an all-out qualifying tyre that was going to deliver maximum performance. But as George has just proved, there was very, very little difference in terms of the actual outright lap time between the medium and the soft. What he talked about there was taking a little compromise for tomorrow, is that tyre, that medium tyre, effectively is one of the tyres that he will have to use in the race tomorrow, and that will just hamper him a little bit. When others around him will be able to start on new tyres, he will have to start on something that's already used a little bit, and that might hamper him slightly. But given the difficulty they'll be taking around here, qualifying position and grid position, perhaps trumping all of that.
Well, we've got a lot to look forward to tomorrow when the race gets underway, as Oscar Piastri has the pole position, but he will be alongside his huge rival Max Verstappen heading down into that first corner, and then the two British drivers behind, George Russell and Lando Norris, they'll be fighting as well. So there'll be plenty to look forward to. Our coverage on Sports Extra will start at 10 to 2 in the afternoon, and we are thoroughly looking forward to it. But it is time now to pass back over to Kevin Howells.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Thanks to the team there. Yeah, looking forward to that tomorrow on Sports Extra. So much going on. Over on 5 Live right now, it's the FA Cup, Crystal Palace versus Man City.